Well, right on. I like to play that faster version of We Will Rock You, which is a slight detour from the one with just the thudding bass line. Queen still in control at 2 minutes past 9 a.m. Zane Dalal is here. He's Associate Music Director at the SOI, the Symphony Orchestra of India. And it's going to be an enterprising hour of conversation.
This is Good Morning Mumbai with Hrishikesh.
Great to see you, my friend. How are you doing?
Very good. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having us.
Absolute pleasure. Just a bit about the history of the SOI, the Symphony Orchestra of India, because before we dive into your association, talk us through that.
Well, it's been a very exciting journey, and in terms of orchestral development, it's been a very short journey. Our counterparts in the West, these large orchestras, the London orchestras, some of the American orchestras, have been in business for 120 years. We, last year, I think, celebrated our 10th anniversary. And one of the things that has been really rewarding and challenging in the Indian context of building an orchestra is that when you decide this great vision that you're going to present an orchestra to the public, that you're going to present an orchestra that will be something Mumbaikars and the nation can be proud of, that there was nothing here in the way that you have in the West. You don't have the tried and tested methods to set up something like this. And so with great vision, I have to say, we're very lucky that the orchestra is an initiative of the National Centre of the Performing Arts down at Nariman Point. The venues and the leadership there and the administration allows something like the SOI to exist, and slowly building the steps on which you have to stand. The steps weren't there. You actually had to build the steps you stand on to get to each stage. We have tried very hard to create the atmosphere at the NCPA where an international ensemble of the quality of the SOI could reside and thrive. And looking back on it now for the 10 years, it's been a remarkable journey. We're very proud of that.
Well, Khushru Santok was here sitting in the same chair as you.
Yes, I understand that.
And he's incredibly passionate about the SOI. And you did say that there are a few driving forces, people who are really keeping the oils or the machines well oiled and running.
He's the key. The key to it, really. I mean, when Khushru had this idea that it was long overdue that an orchestra be presented to Mumbai, he wasn't just seeing it in terms of wouldn't it be nice if. He was seeing it as a real need, thinking globally in many ways. I think he foresaw the internationalization of Mumbai as a city of this nature, a city that has this sort of economy, a city that has this sort of international structure, really needs this artistic jewel that all the other cities have. And everybody tends to gravitate towards an orchestra when they think about culture, when they think about the high point of an offering, certainly in classical music, certainly in music, whether it's Berlin or London or New York or Dallas or Seoul or Beijing. People gravitate to what's the culture, what's going on in music, and the ambassadors for that and the poster children for that are usually the orchestra. And it was long overdue. And I think his vision to make it come true has been not only the initial vision, but this driving force to not take no for an answer and to go through tremendous adversity. Many of us will remember that we've been through quite a recession in the building process of the orchestra. We set it into motion and then had to deal with all kinds of economic problems. The whole world did. And to persevere through that, to create the orchestral environment through that, to make sure it not just showed up and played, not just thrived, but went beyond the expectations to be able to do opera seasons and to go on tour and to record and to do all these things was really a labor of love. And yes, we're indebted to the mantle that the NCPA provides the SOI, and our music director Marat Bizingaliev and myself are indebted also to the fact that the NCPA is led by this visionary chap, Khushru Santok, who not only has the vision but also the power to see it through.
We're streaming audio all over the nation on www.onecast.in. That's numeral 1cast.in. We're live on Mumbai radio sets on 94.3 on the FM band. And of course, streaming Facebook live on facebook.com/radio1.mum. Only if you're not driving. Statutory warning. If you're in the backseat of a radio taxi, you're being chauffeur driven, or you're at the office or at home without a radio set, then you can check out the Facebook live stream. Back with Zane Dalal. Right after this, it's Van Halen and Jump. Van Halen, the early albums were all numeral based. The song's called 1984. Of course, it's pure coincidence that it was released in the year 1984. There was also another one called 5150. Jump, which my guest of the day, Zane Dalal, Associate Music Director at the SOI, Symphony Orchestra of India, has thoroughly enjoyed. More conversation.
This is Good Morning Mumbai with Hrishikesh.
Radio 1.
Now, for those of you who don't know, he's a choir master, organist, associate music director at the SOI, but also a musicologist of great repute, which means, he does all these wonderful lectures, workshops on music. So what's the February calendar looking like at the NCPA, at the Jamshed Baba, as far as the SOI is concerned?
It's looking busy, which also is a great thing. It wasn't always that way, and we're very proud to present this many offerings in classical music in our season. I'm personally also quite busy, which is a good thing. Let's see if I can get the dates right here. On the 2nd of February, which is on Friday, there is a small talk at the Somaya Center that I'm doing, which is at 6:30 p.m. And that's covering the season of music, why these composers we're doing in February are so wonderful, why their music is so great. I can go into that now, but come to the lecture, it'd be better. There's a short form for that, but all these composers wrote in the 1800s, and they weren't writing what was expected of them. They were writing what they wanted to express their emotion. And it is a new time in the writing of music, and that's what makes it so wonderful. You got this tremendous beauty, drama, energy, emotion in their music. And that's what I'm discussing on the 2nd. On the 4th, there is a talk at the NCPA, which is at 5 p.m. That's on Sunday the 4th. On Wagner, the music that this man made, his art form, his drama, and his link to the social construct that is really quite a terrible chapter, and it brings rise to this question: can the artist be separated from the art? Because Wagner is obviously responsible for this extraordinary music, this drive, this world-renowned music, and he and, to a certain extent, some of his family and the legacy they had with the Third Reich and the Hitler regime puts a different colour on who they were and what that means. And so it's a very interesting question that people should ask themselves, is it okay to be a perfectly rotten human being? And if you are a perfectly rotten human being or a tragically flawed one, can you still produce great art, and can it be celebrated? And that's the dichotomy. So that I'm going to explore some of that on Sunday. But it's really the journey of
I'm really sorry. I know you're talking about incredibly serious stuff, but
I know, but it's worth a laugh. It's like, how do you?
It's really worth a laugh because in that beautiful British accent of yours, you said rotten human being, terrible human being.
I mean, it's I
know exactly what you mean.
No, anyone in their emotional, anyone out there, any one of your listeners right now will know of an instance where they are grappling with exactly this. Here is something absolutely beautiful, and is the creator someone who is worthy of celebration? And the answer is yes, and isn't that wonderful? And look at this extraordinary work, look at what they've presented to the world. And then all of a sudden, in the next second, you realize that person has done something objectionable, or something that is not part of what society would have liked him or her to do, all of a sudden, 1 minute later, is that stuff that you celebrated as being brilliant not brilliant? Or do you have to come to a reckoning of the separation between the human being and the flawed errors of the human being and what I believe to be a separate unlocking mechanism that allows a human being to present what is actually not there, something from the
it's like all these officers of the Reich came home for dinner and they do all these ghastly things outside, but the family never found out about it because they were encouraged to to make more babies, to have perfectly normal dinner conversations away from all the genocide.
That is true, but that there was it's difficult to say, because if you went back on it and talked about the history of it, those people in 1945, when the Allies came in, who had to prove that they did not know what was going on, stuck with that story.
Wow. So you're saying
but
the grandchildren
here's the
said
thing.
We didn't know.
Well, in the 50s, and then later on in the 60s for those who were alive, and then, in the case of the Wagners, they are on record sometimes in their writing and in their attributable stuff, saying, well, he really was a great man. And, we knew stuff was going on. We didn't care too much about it. It's a process. And I will be the first to say, and I think anyone listening would say, okay, how would you know? How would you have reacted in that situation? You can't put that on anyone. You can't say, well, holier than thou, we're sitting here in 2018, and of course we wouldn't have succumbed to that kind of stuff. And it's impossible to say. Terror is terror. State terror is worse. And the world still goes through that right in front of our very eyes. So I don't think anyone can say I would have behaved differently, but it is worth remarking. It's worth remarking in the sense of artistic creation. Is artistic creation that was great and wonderful and valid at one moment all of a sudden not great and wonderful and valid just because you found out something about the artist? I think that's a really contemporary conversation. We've had so many people in the process of sexual harassment, or in the process of these women coming forward saying enough is enough on this crazy behavior. I think that's perfectly valid. I think that's a good conversation to have. I think there's all kinds of things that will take their own waves of energy. But we still have to come back and say, well, were these people actually, to quote again, rotten human beings, or were they tragically flawed and they didn't understand the concept of what was going on, or did they? And then have to separate that and say, does it change the fact that they were, and from my perspective, from musicians' perspective, from someone who's looked at these great luminaries, we have people in the news right now who are great conductors, great musicians, who have fallen prey to their own past, they've fallen prey to their own flaws, and they've fallen prey to a verbal and very vocal, powerful tide of change. That you can't argue with that. That's history. That's what's going on. But you can't all of a sudden say, I no longer like what they did in 1960.
Sure. Okay. Now the workshop at the Somaya, you have to register for it, right? So can one go onto the SOI website and do a registry, or?
I think that's possible. Yeah. You can again in both places, the Somaya and at the NCPA, the space is limited. But it would be great to get to that point that we were turning people away. But I mean, this is
okay. So go and register for it. If you just do a Google of Symphony Orchestra of India SOI, the website will pop up, and you can go and register for this wonderful workshop. You're not going to hear us for the next 7 minutes. We're going to do some messages and come back. If you have any questions or comments, happy to read it out on air. One space, your comment and name, 0 is the in-studio SMS line. On Twitter as well as Facebook, you go to the search bar, you type HRISHIKAY. I will pop up. You could tweet or post on the timeline inbox, and facebook.com/radio1.mum, our official page. There again, drop a comment in the timeline inbox along with your name, and I'll read it out on air. Zane Dalal will be back after these messages.
94.3 Radio 1.
Eminem, the real Slim Shady. Incidentally, he's back with Ed Sheeran. River is just climbing up at the top 40 charts across the world. Zane Dalal is here. He's Associate Music Director at the SOI, the Symphony Orchestra of India. Some remarkable work coming out of the SOI. And for those of you who are not driving, statutory warning: if you're in the back seat of a car being chauffeur-driven, or you're in a radio taxi, or you're at home or at the office, stranded without a radio set. Then we're streaming live on Twitter and Periscope now at HRISHIKAY. Still streaming audio across the nation on www.onecast.in, numeral 1cast.in, and 94.3 Radio 1 on radio sets across Mumbai city. More conversation.
This is Good Morning Mumbai with Hrishikesh.
Okay, let's move up that calendar. There's the discussion on the 2nd, which you're doing at the KJ Somaya. People can go on to soimumbai.com and register. Let's move forth on the calendar.
And then the talk on the 4th. And then the question you asked is probably...
The venue for the 4th,
The venue for the 4th is the NCPA.
The NCPA,
Gorgeous Dance Theatre at the NCPA. The reason you asked the question, I think, and the reason why I really should have answered, was the wonderful concerts we have with the orchestra. The first concert of the February season is on the 11th, and that has the music of Wagner. It has a homage to Wagner, if you like, by the great conductor Lorin Maazel. Wagner's music, we touched on it earlier, but the music itself represents the absolute pinnacle of high romanticism. It is energy, drama, emotion, to the point that you possibly couldn't bear it anymore. It's maybe too much for some people. And he, as some people will know, wrote 4 huge operas that form the Ring cycle, the Ring of the Nibelungen. And these 4 operas, if you played them back-to-back, last 17 hours. They have some wonderful music in that 17 hours. In my opinion, not all 17 is great. So Lorin Maazel has condensed the best of what that operatic experience would be orchestrally, and condenses it into an hour and 15 minutes for orchestra. And that is what we're performing on the 11th. And it really, for people who don't know Wagner, it will be an extraordinary way to immerse yourself into this wonderful, stretchy, energetic, dramatic music without going through 17 hours of opera. For those of us who do know Wagner and do know the 17 hours of opera, do love it, we will recognize all those bits and pieces that we've come to love. And so it's really a feast, and it is a testament to the orchestra as well, because as pronounced and as grand as the music of Wagner is, it takes an orchestra that can do that pronouncing in a grand way. And we've arrived at a place where we actually can provide that. And so we're very proud to be presenting Wagner on the 11th. The second concert is on the 16th of February. And that is a good pairing with the same kind of style that we had with the Wagner. We have the anchor piece is the great Alpine Symphony of Richard Strauss, written in between 1911 and 1915, so it brings us into the modern era. Strauss had a really adept way of writing music and having a pictorial element to it. He wrote in this genre the tone poem, where he would tell you what he was writing about and then write the music for it, and you would automatically think, oh my god, yes, that's exactly what it's like. And he had this uncanny ability to do it. One of his first earlier tone poems was Death and Transfiguration, which he wrote when he was a very young guy. And then when he was on his deathbed, and he was apparently going through these processes of seeing the white light and all that, he held the hand of someone who was at his deathbed and said, yes, it's exactly how I wrote it. I think that's a little pompous, but but it points you to the fact that he knew he was doing something extraordinary with this. And when you come to a piece like the Alpine Symphony, and he says this is a piece about the symphony and the journey up and down the mountain in a storm or in good weather or from the peak or from the... I guarantee our listeners who will come to this performance, if they've not been to the Alps, will feel the cold, will feel the what the view at the peak is like. We'll feel what it's like to have the sun on the south face of the mountain, the cold on the north face, the journey down into the valley. It's all there in an extraordinary way. And he's one of the few composers who can do this. And so I said that he was pompous in saying that he'd written exactly how death would go. But here in this alpine scape, it's extraordinary. He's absolutely hit the nail on the head. The piece is accompanied with 4 songs by Gustav Mahler, sung by the very famous baritone Benjamin Apple. He's a young, up-and-coming chap who's really making waves. Wonderful voice. And these pieces were written by Mahler for an unrequited love, and he wrote the libretto and the music for it. So it's kind of a good immersement into that. So that's a great concert to come to. The next concert, Benjamin Apple actually does a solo recital on the 18th, I think, so that's worth coming to. It's extraordinary that these people are here in Mumbai. They come and they are a part of the NCPA's roster. They're part of the SOI roster because we have developed a name that allows people of this stature to come. And this is something that we're very prideful of in the last 10 years, to have developed an international standing that makes these kind of artists' visits possible, and makes it possible for Mumbaikas to just drive a few minutes and go and see them live. We're in an unusual time. One should make good use of it. We have a concert on the 24th, which I have the great privilege of conducting, which is the music of Mendelssohn. We have the Mendelssohn Italian Symphony, the Schubert Unfinished Symphony, and the Mendelssohn Piano Concerto No. 1 in G minor by Roberto Proceda, who's our concert pianist. Again, very fine pianist. And that concert really, I think is, if you're looking for a distraction from your daily life in Mumbai, and it's very tuneful, very beautiful music, very accessible, I think you'll have a really good time. The concert, Schubert wrote this unfinished symphony in 2 movements. I don't think he thought it was unfinished, but it's this absolutely miraculous laying out of orchestration and beauty and poise and perfect placing. And Mendelssohn, on many of his trips, he went to Scotland, he went to London, he went to Italy, and when he went, he was inspired, and this 4th symphony of his is called the Italian Symphony. And it is, he says it's one of his best works, his joyous approach to arriving in Italy. And if any of you have been to Italy that first time, it has that effect. It's like, gosh, I'm in this place that really wants me to wake up and notice. And so this piece is full of the joy and the élan of arriving in Italy. And so that's on the 24th. And Roberto Proceda does a solo concert piano recital on the 26th. And he's been with us before. He's been to Mumbai before. He's a great pianist. And it's something that I think Mumbaikas shouldn't miss. The season continues briefly in March.
We'll come to that.
And we'll come to that later.
We're going to come to the March season, but before we move on, it's important. Tickets are at bookmyshow.com, also at the NCPA box office. Zane Dalal is here. Breathe, Jax Jones. Back in a couple of minutes at 9:41 live. Jax Jones, Eno Rolson. It's called Breathe at 9:45 live in studio with the Associate Music Director of the SOI, the Symphony Orchestra of India. That's Zane Dalal. He's a musicologist, organist, choir master, all of that, and running me through some wonderful nuggets of music history, Western classical music history. We're going live on Instagram as we speak on video form. That's at HRISHIKY on Instagram. Still streaming live across the nation, audio, www.onecast.in, that's numeral 1cast.in, and 94.3 Radio 1 on your radio sets right here in Mumbai City. Okay, I'm given to understand that you're back for the attack in March. That's the calendar.
That's
Tell us
right.
about that. Yeah.
Well, there are two concerts in March, early March, on the 4th and on the 6th. We're very happy to invite back to us and for the Mumbai audiences the Bournemouth Symphony Chorus. They're a great group of singers, and We've had them here before under the leadership of their conductor Gavin Carr, and Gavin Carr will do the concert on the 4th. That includes Beethoven's Choral Fantasy, which is an extraordinary work that is very connected with his 9th symphony, very similar in the style. 4 soloists, soprano, mezzo, tenor, and bass, along with the full chorus and the Symphony Orchestra of India. The Haydn Nelson Mass, I think, is also on that program, and I think it's going to be a wonderful feast, because I think some people really enjoy the idea of what it's like to join the choral forces with a symphony orchestra. It's a different sound, it's a different power, it's a different feeling, and it's always an event to hear that kind of thing live. And I think they're going to be at least 90 people in the chorus, so it's a huge chorus, very well-trained singers, along with our orchestra. We're very proud that they're coming to us, and they're returning to us, because, again, the reputation is there and the standard is there. And then on the 6th of March, again, I have the privilege of conducting Handel's Messiah, with the same 4 soloists and the chorus. I'm really looking forward to it. It's an extraordinary work. Those of your listeners who know Handel's Messiah, it is a perennial favorite all over the world. It is this musician's way of telling the greatest story ever told. It is in many ways similar to Handel opera, even though it's this oratorio style. And it's a work very close to my heart. I think I probably sang it as a treble, and then an alto, and then as my voice broke, as a tenor, and then as a baritone, and then conducting it, and then playing for it. So it's been a part of my fabric for a while. So I'm really looking forward to that, and I think it's a great opportunity for people to come and hear the orchestra with a great chorus.
Allow me to break away from the SOI, albeit briefly, and come to a bit of your other achievements. I'm really fascinated to know that you led the London premiere of Peshkar with the BBC Concert Orchestra at the Royal Festival Hall in the inaugural concert of the South Bank Centre's festival. This is Alchemy in May of 2016, and incidentally this is a tabla concerto with Ustad Zakir Hussain. So that must have been one of the big tick marks of your life.
It really is. The idea of Peshkar was really Peshkar is Ustad Zakirji's tabla concerto that he wrote for the SOI. It's an NCPA commission. And we were going to take the orchestra on a tour of Switzerland, 3 cities, the Zurich, Geneva, and St. Gallen. And we needed a vehicle to not only show that the orchestra had reached this sort of position where it should tour internationally, but something that was innately Indian, something that we could take that was would be a good national, pin in the map. And from my perspective, and I would take whatever comments are coming back this way, the one person that I could think of who would create a good fit for that was Zakirji, because the tabla provides a rhythmic element that is able in its own genre, and especially in his hands, to create an entire world of Indian music, an entire world of Indian sonic experience that is instantly approachable and acceptable to anyone who listens it worldwide, and provide it with an orchestra, with a Western orchestra, without disturbing the ethos and the promise of the Western orchestra as it happens, because it is a rhythmic instrument, and in deference to Zakirji, also a melodic instrument, the way he plays it. But the idea of the tabla and the orchestra together makes a more perfect union between East and West than perhaps another instrument may have, in my opinion.
And just a small interruption here.
Yeah.
When you say he wrote the concerto, I thought Hindustani classical music couldn't really be written.
Well, here,
correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, no, that is true. The tradition is not there to write it. The tradition is there to explore it while it plays, while you present it. And there's a lot of that too. But Zakirji, what he's done and what he was able to do was to deliver understanding how an orchestra works, understanding the way the Western music is written. He was able to provide us with not just his part, which he's improvising and playing, but write music for us, for the full orchestra, for the woodwinds, for the bassoons, for the strings, for the cello. And what's really interesting is that the actual basis, the tintal, whatever it is, the tukra, or whatever those small sections of the tabla solo are transferred to the orchestra. And so whatever rhythm he's playing will all of a sudden show up in the bassoon or show up in the cello.
Wow.
And it's a really integral piece, and it is a modern transformation of what a tabla concerto could be. And so we had this tremendous journey with him, and the journey took us after Switzerland to people saying, well, no, we like this piece, would you come and do it at Alchemy? And I was very fortunate that Zakirji requested that I conduct the piece. And we went, and we were there for a couple of days, and we rehearsed with the orchestra and performed it at the Royal Festival Hall. And we had a little Q&A afterwards on the promise of East and West, and how the two traditions meet, and how they diverge, and how they complement each other. And we actually have the process is a continuing situation. The orchestra is invited to the Beethoven Festival in Bonn, which is a great accolade for us, and that's happening in September of this year. And we're invited to the UK for concerts in January in 2019. And in both those tours, we will present this piece as well, because it becomes such a good vehicle for bringing something that is innately Indian and something that allows us to speak as an orchestra in the Western way as well.
Our last leg of conversation with Zane Dalal is the Associate Music Director at the SOI, Symphony Orchestra of India. You have any comments? I'm going to read all of them out at the fag end of the show, so get your comments or questions in. One, space your comment or your question and name to 53650 on SMS. At HRISHIKY on Twitter as well as Facebook, and facebook.com/radio1.mum. Drop a comment in the timeline inbox along with your name, and I will bring it up on the end of the show with Zane Dalal. See you in a bit. It's 9:54. My name is Hrishikesh. Messages and back.
94.3 Radio 1.
Christina Aguilera, What a Girl Wants. Zane Dalal is here, Associate Music Director at the Symphony Orchestra of India. Just run us through the February and the March season, salient features of that, a last leg of conversation.
This is Good Morning Mumbai with Hrishikesh.
Radio 1.
So speak to me about your music director, Marat Bisangaliev, and of course all the wonderful stuff you're doing in terms of trying to give back and music education.
Well, thank you for the opportunity of doing that. We, right in the very beginning, I would say 10 years ago, with Khushru Santok and our music director, Marat Bisangaliev, realized that if an orchestra was to succeed in a place where there hadn't been one, where there was no precedent for one, and where we would constantly have to fight for the yardage and keep the yardage that we hard fought to be in this process of providing Western classical music to a large Indian city. It's an unusual project. We knew that one of the things that we would have to do was to connect with the community we serve, connect with the audiences that we want to reach, and connect with the life in the city that we serve. It would have been easier for us to just plonk down an orchestra and not worry about how it connects to its environment around it. And that would have been short-lived, and it would have been, it wasn't Khushru's style, and it certainly wasn't Marat's style. We wanted to avoid the idea that we were some sort of a alien spaceship that landed twice a year, and then took off, allowing people to sort of marvel at the wake of this machinery that had come and gone. We wanted to make sure that two things were in place. That people who came to our concerts understood that we had a connection to the city, that we had a connection to the community, and that there would be a promise of Indian local talent, musicians that were homegrown, joining the orchestra, because that is the long-term solution. It is a meritocracy. We have gone through several phases of people saying, well, where are the Indians in this Indian orchestra? And the response to that, of course, is very clear. An orchestra is not a football team. It is not a nationalistic competition. It is a meritocracy, because Beethoven demands that his music be played by someone who is capable, and we provide someone who is capable to do that work. The music demands it. Indian talent is so extraordinary, and we have come to see this, and we have come to recognize it, and we knew it before starting on this project. Indian talent is amazing. What was missing was the formal education, the formal Western education. And instead of complaining about it, the NCPA, and especially, I would say, it's a legacy process for Khushru Santok, and is a legacy process for Marat Bizingaliev, our music director, the education of young, talented Indian local musicians, so that they can learn the music in the right way and join the orchestra, so that it becomes an investment in their future, and we are investing back in the community, is the way to do it, and the way that we have decided to do it. And so the NCPA, instead of complaining that the education wasn't there, and we're talking about, if your listeners can imagine, postgraduate work on a Western instrument, postgraduate work as you would in a college on the bassoon or on the trumpet, it just doesn't exist here. And all the orchestras everywhere else in the world are fed by conservatories that already have a tradition of 90, 100 years. We don't have that. We don't have that. And rather than complain about it and then ignore it, we have begun it. And against the odds, and sometimes in the process of the challenge of wondering how it will work, the NCPA has put forward courses for very talented musicians who have an end to playing in the orchestra by the time they've completed their studies. Marat Bizingaliev knew about this. This is the way he came up in life, the schools that he attended. He's really good at orchestra building and really good at creating this atmosphere for the future and the legacy, so that an orchestra's roots go deep. And we're really, really lucky that Marat was able to give us this sense of what should be there and how it would work, and how it would work best, so that we create a process. We started the school just a very few years back, and we're very proud of some of our younger students, and we're talking about very, very young students. Also, predominantly, I would like to say girls, which I think is a great thing, because I think it not only is music a meritocracy, it is also a great equalizer of where you can be and what you can do with your life. And we have invitations, I think, last week to take this group of young children that we have nurtured to Moscow or to Dubai to perform, because they've reached a level very, very quickly. And starting at the age of 7 or 8 or 9, by the time they're 15 and 16, which some of them are getting to be, they will come into a standard where we can actually accept them into the orchestra. And again, in a lightning process, in a very, very short space of time, we've managed to create this environment where there is a group of people coming up behind who are Indian, who are local, who are invested in the process with the orchestra. And Khushru Santok allowing it to happen, me being able to help, but Marat Bizingaliev driving this extraordinary legacy moment for the SOI is one of the things we're very, very proud of, and I think he's very proud of. Other than being a great violinist and joining us in the orchestra, we have a quick run out to Chennai on the 22nd. He'll be playing with us there, and he's a pleasure to work with, and we're very lucky to have him.
Okay, it's last four digits 7580 Kaizad. Does the SOI cover other composers like Chopin, Vivaldi, Tchaikovsky?
Interesting question. Yes, we do. We have done some Vivaldi, not very much. He goes back into the late 1600s, early 1700s, and that's a style of music that sometimes is less appealing. And we're in the process of ticket selling and building an organization, so we have to check repertoire. Chopin wrote very little symphonic music, was a brilliant pianist, a Polish pianist, and wrote some wonderful piano concerti. I'm trying to think if we've done a Chopin piano concerto yet. We've done one. I think the second. And Tchaikovsky, we play quite frequently. We did Tchaikovsky last season. We did Tchaikovsky Symphony Number 4. I performed Tchaikovsky Number 5. We've done Tchaikovsky Number 6. We haven't done his piano concerto. We've done his first piano concerto. We're looking forward to doing his second. And that's absolutely our bread and butter. The orchestra has a wonderful Russian strings process of this romanticism, so they take to this music very well. But just I would say, just in passing, what I know to be true in the last 10 years, it is an amazing thing that we, on the presenting side of it, managed to get an orchestra of this caliber to its feet in such a short amount of time. It is equally amazing that Mumbaikas have a right and ability, and this is their orchestra, that they can go and support this orchestra at Nariman Point in 2 seasons and have this wonderful international music at the very highest standard live for them.
Okay, 8935, your last 4 digits. E. Augustine, enjoying all the conversation. Only wish you'd introduce the music too. Sorry, brother. Format issues. Arzan Sam Wadia, a big hello to a dear fellow Bawa. Got to know Zane during the North American Zoroastrian Congress in LA in 2014. His mum Dunmai was an amazing and inspiring Zoroastrian leader here in the US. Dennis Tarapurwala, good stuff. Great question on separating the artist and the art. Thank you. Ankit Desai, good morning to you and Maestro Zane Dalal. He does love Beethoven, true trivia. And Virendra Rao says, good morning, Hrishikesh. Okay, we're above time, so we've got to say bye-bye. Thanks very much. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you so much for having us. Our pleasure.
We're going to do some messages and come back. Up ahead, lots of pre-budget talk. Remember, the union budget is being tabled on the 1st, and we're leading up to that big event.
94.3 Radio 1.